If you thought the drama was finally over once the divorce papers dried and the headlines cooled off, think again. What looked like closure was really just a pause, because now Porsha Williams has been pulled straight back into court chaos, and this time it isn't fueled by rumors, reaction videos, or anonymous blog speculation. This time it's filings, it's documented timelines, it's language buried in legal paperwork that doesn't accuse loudly but suggests quietly, and sometimes quiet is far more dangerous. Insiders are saying Todd Tucker wasn't prepared for how fast this would escalate. One moment the narrative felt settled, the next it felt unstable. The internet froze, blogs that usually jump to conclusions hesitated. Then came the shift. Screenshots started circulating, references to court submissions appeared, and whispers about late-night calls that were never meant to surface began spreading. This isn't just messy celebrity drama. This is what happens when secrets refuse to stay buried and instead detonate at the worst possible time. So let's really ask the question no one wants to answer out loud. If you were in her position, same pressure, same spotlight, same possibility of your name appearing in documents you didn't expect, what would you do? Because people online are already saying somebody said too much and now it's catching up. And once we unpack how this unfolded, it becomes clear this wasn't sudden, it was building. After the divorce dust settled, Porsha didn't launch into explanations. She didn't go on a defensive press tour. Instead, she went quiet. Her social media became polished, curated, almost serene. Smiles, glam shots, inspirational captions. To the outside world, it looked like recovery. It looked like peace. But silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means pressure accumulating behind the scenes, like steam building inside a sealed container. Phones lighting up with conversations that don't make it to camera, assistants fielding questions they can't fully answer, friends choosing their words more carefully than usual. For months, insiders hinted that something from the past hadn't fully settled, a timeline that didn't align the way it should have, a meeting that happened slightly off schedule, a connection that looked harmless at first glance, but heavier when examined twice. At first, it felt small, like gossip often does before it gains traction. But the difference this time was documentation. When speculation meets paperwork, the temperature changes, and slowly that temperature started rising. The story doesn't begin with court filings. It begins earlier, when the marriage cracks were still hidden behind anniversary tributes and red carpet appearances. Friends noticed subtle shifts, pauses in conversation, delayed responses to texts, certain memes avoided publicly but typed freely in private messages. There were events Porsha would leave earlier than expected, not visibly upset, not dramatic, just guarded. People close to her say that's when her energy changed. She stopped trusting rooms, she started trusting records. Screenshots became a form of security. Then came the DMs, not explosive, not scandalous on their own, but cautious. Delete that thread. We'll fix it later. Let's not discuss this here. Language like that doesn't appear when everything is simple. It appears when someone senses that a record might one day matter. Meanwhile, Todd presented calm confidence. He talked about stability, about business growth, about legacy. Publicly, the message was consistent. The worst was behind them. But legal processes have a way of reopening what people think they've closed. When a court clerk stamps a date onto a filing, the past stops being flexible. It becomes fixed. According to those who reviewed the recent submissions, the new material didn't scream accusation. It didn't point fingers with dramatic language. Instead, it contextualized, it connected moments, it aligned timestamps. And once those dots were placed side by side, one name kept pulling attention back like gravity: Porsha's. Not directly accused, not explicitly highlighted, but present enough in phrasing to spark scrutiny. Fans dissected every line. Why reference that date? Why include that location? Why note that communication window? It became a digital investigation. Screenshots of the filings circulated across social media platforms, each paragraph analyzed like a coded message. And once the public starts assembling its own timeline, silence becomes suspicious. The absence of denial can feel louder than denial itself. Behind the scenes, reactions reportedly turned urgent. Calls went unanswered. Meetings were scheduled quickly. One insider described a gathering where no one even sat down. Phones were placed face up on the table. Notifications buzzed constantly. Someone attempted humor about needing stronger coffee, but the joke landed flat. That's what panic looks like when it's dressed professionally, controlled but fast. Then came the rumor that shifted everything. A discrepancy, not an accusation, a discrepancy. Overlapping dates that shouldn't overlap. Logged communications during moments when public narratives claimed distance. Legal analysts know that discrepancies matter because they suggest something isn't aligned, and in legal contexts, alignment is everything. Insiders within the legal circle hinted that someone underestimated how deeply digital trails would be examined. A phone stores more than we remember. A server preserves more than we intend. When attorneys allegedly began cross-referencing timestamps with physical movements, the energy reportedly changed. One source described it as the moment confidence left the room. That's when whispers about screenshots began surfacing, not fully leaked, not officially released, but acknowledged enough to create tension. A cropped message, a partial timestamp, the idea that more existed. And the internet did what it always does when it senses vulnerability. It amplified. Todd's camp responded swiftly. Statements about context, about misinterpretation, about selective framing. And while denials are standard in moments like this, urgency often fuels curiosity rather than calming it. Because when the response feels rushed, the public leans in harder. Then came murmurs of an informal understanding, an agreement to leave certain details unspoken, not contractual, not documented, just mutual discretion. If that rumor holds any truth, it explains the tension, because once court processes intensify, informal agreements dissolve. Judges don't honor silence, they request records. Names began surfacing in whispers, familiar industry figures, mutual connections, individuals who once remained neutral. Some blogs hinted at blindsided reactions within extended circles. Others suggested private text threads were being reviewed for tone as much as content. Nothing definitive, but enough smoke to make observers question what fire might exist. The alleged audio clip rumor ignited another wave, a short recording, a stressed voice, a sentence cut off mid-thought. Whether authentic or not, the idea of its existence was enough to escalate concern, because once the public believes more evidence could surface, perception shifts from curiosity to anticipation. Every pause in an interview feels intentional, every careful word feels rehearsed. Humor crept into commentary. Nothing says nothing to hide like emergency calls to your attorney, one creator joked. But beneath the sarcasm was tension. The narrative had transformed from emotional fallout to procedural risk, and that shift is significant. Feelings fade, filings remain. As days passed, the atmosphere grew heavier rather than louder. Todd reportedly moved between confidence and calculation, asking privately how much the court truly knew. That question alone suggests awareness of vulnerability, because once someone starts measuring exposure, they understand the stakes. Porsha's reaction appeared different, not reactive, strategic. She tightened her circle, limited appearances, documented interactions, revisited past conversations with fresh caution. Insiders say she began preparing rather than defending, and that distinction matters. Preparation signals foresight, defense signals fear. Emotionally, the toll reportedly manifested in fatigue rather than drama. Late nights, canceled engagements, measured social media presence. Trauma in high-profile situations doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it looks like control. Pressure doesn't just test narratives, it tests relationships. Support systems that once felt solid can fracture under scrutiny. Friends who were vocal became careful. Words like allegedly replaced certainty. Some individuals chose distance over defense. No arguments, no announcements, just space. One insider described a moment when support vanished overnight, not because of betrayal, but because of risk. And that quiet withdrawal often says more than any public statement. In crises, priorities reveal themselves. Speculation has cooled into analysis. The chaos isn't loud anymore, it's calculated. And quiet scandals are often the most enduring because they don't burn out, they settle in. The possibility of follow-up hearings looms. The implication that documentation could expand keeps tension alive. However, for nearly 9 years, the public has watched fragments of their lives play out on screens, smiles at red carpet events, strategic interviews, carefully worded captions, appearances that suggested control, unity, stability. But according to courtroom insiders, that image may have been dramatically challenged in a single legal proceeding that left observers stunned and social media spiraling. And here's what makes this different. This wasn't reality TV editing. This wasn't reunion stage dramatics. This was a courtroom, structured, formal, procedural, a place where statements carry legal weight, a place where words are recorded, documented, and preserved. And yet, witnesses say the tension in that room felt thicker than any televised confrontation. The Los Angeles Superior Court was reportedly packed well before proceedings began. Journalists filled the back rows. Legal observers whispered speculation. Outside, fans gathered with phones in hand, anticipating updates that could ignite trending topics within minutes. The atmosphere wasn't chaotic at first. It was expectant, focused, controlled. Todd Tucker allegedly entered projecting composure, crisp suit, steady posture, the demeanor of someone confident in his position. For years, he has publicly maintained that his personal and family matters were handled appropriately and within legal boundaries. To many watching from afar, he appeared grounded, unfazed by online speculation. Across the room sat Kandi Burruss, described by attendees as quiet but intensely observant. Her posture reportedly rigid, her expression unreadable. For someone who has spent years defending her marriage publicly, this moment carried visible weight, not panic, but gravity. Then the doors opened again, and in walked Porsha Williams. Observers describe her entrance not as dramatic but deliberate. Measured steps, calm expression, focused gaze. She didn't appear emotional or reactive. She appeared prepared. And that distinction, according to those present, changed everything. According to multiple accounts from people inside the courtroom, Porsha requested the opportunity to present new information before any final decisions were considered. What followed has been described as the moment the temperature in the room shifted from routine to electric. Sources claim she introduced documentation that challenged long-standing assumptions surrounding the children central to the case. Now, it's important to emphasize that these are allegations raised in court, not confirmed rulings. No official verdict has publicly validated the claims being discussed online. However, the reaction inside the courtroom suggests the statements were significant enough to disrupt expectations. Witnesses describe audible gasps, attorneys leaning forward, Todd's legal team immediately objecting, the judge requesting order as murmurs rippled through the gallery. It wasn't shouting that defined the moment, it was silence, the kind of silence that falls when something unexpected lands heavily. And within minutes, phones reportedly began buzzing, courtroom observers discreetly updating contacts, journalists drafting headlines in real time. Insiders say Porsha arrived with a substantial folder of materials, records, communications, and documents that she believes support her claims. While the specific contents have not been publicly released, the fact that the judge reviewed them carefully suggests they were not dismissed outright. This is where narrative meets procedure, because when paperwork enters a courtroom, it isn't evaluated based on emotion, it's evaluated based on admissibility, authenticity, and relevance. Observers describe the judge leaning forward, scanning pages with narrowed focus, asking measured questions. Todd reportedly appeared visibly tense during this review, not explosive, not dramatic, but no longer fully at ease. The power of documentation lies in its permanence. Social media posts can be deleted, public statements can be reframed, but official records carry weight. And if new records were indeed introduced, that could mean extended review, further hearings, or even independent verification processes. The room, according to one observer, felt suspended in uncertainty. Then came another twist. Whispers began circulating that an audio recording was referenced during the proceedings, allegedly containing private remarks about keeping certain matters confidential. Let's be absolutely clear, the existence, authenticity, and admissibility of any such recording have not been independently confirmed. But the mere mention of recorded communication reportedly intensified the tension in the courtroom. Because audio evidence changes perception instantly, it moves discussions from interpretation to tone, from memory to playback. Attorneys reportedly objected, the judge called for order, the gallery leaned in, and outside the courthouse, social media accounts began posting speculative updates before the hearing even paused. When rumors of recordings surface, the public reaction often precedes the legal process, and that reaction can be explosive. As if parental claims and alleged recordings weren't enough, courtroom chatter suggests financial documents were also discussed. Allegations of questionable transfers, business discrepancies, and offshore accounts reportedly surfaced during arguments. Again, these are claims raised in court, not proven conclusions. But financial documentation involves audits, traceable transactions, and regulatory oversight. If discrepancies exist, they require structured investigation. Observers say once finances entered the conversation, the dynamic changed from emotional dispute to procedural risk. That's when the legal implications start to stretch beyond personal relationships.
And within hours, hashtags allegedly began trending across platforms. Hashtag courtroom chaos, hashtag receipts, hashtag legal drama. The internet, as always, moved faster than confirmation. One of the most discussed aspects of the alleged hearing was Kandi's demeanor. According to attendees, she did not react outwardly to the claims being presented. No visible outburst, no dramatic confrontation, just stillness. But stillness can be deceptive. Observers noted subtle shifts, tightened hands, controlled breathing, focused attention on each document reviewed, the kind of reaction that suggests internal processing rather than external explosion. Online commentary quickly split. Some interpreted her silence as shock, others saw it as strength. Some speculated prior awareness, others believed she was hearing new information for the first time. Without direct statements from her, interpretation fills the gap, and interpretation spreads quickly. Perhaps the most explosive rumor to come from the courtroom is that DNA results were referenced. Let's clarify again, no official public ruling has confirmed this claim, but according to insiders, biological parentage was discussed in a way that raised the possibility of testing or review. DNA discussions change everything, because unlike narratives, DNA deals in measurable science. If tests were introduced or requested, that could signal extended proceedings and further legal review. And once the word DNA circulates online, speculation multiplies. Reaction videos dissected the possibility, commentators debated timelines, forums exploded with theories, but until verified by official court documents, these remain allegations within an ongoing legal matter. Perhaps the most consequential development, if accurate, is the suggestion that the judge indicated further review may be necessary, not a final ruling, not a verdict, but potential investigation. And investigation is a powerful word. It suggests examination beyond surface arguments. It suggests documentation being cross-checked. It suggests timelines being reconstructed. If that process moves forward, this story evolves from dramatic allegation to procedural scrutiny. And once scrutiny begins, narratives can unravel in unpredictable ways. Within hours, commentary channels were dissecting every alleged detail. Twitter threads mapped potential timelines. TikTok analysts slowed down courtroom footage for micro-expressions. Reddit forums built layered theories involving financial motives, relationship dynamics, and long-term strategy.
Some viewers rallied behind Porsha, praising her alleged preparedness and willingness to speak in a legal setting. Others urged caution, reminding audiences that allegations are not verdicts. And some questioned whether the situation was being amplified beyond its legal reality. The truth is, once public figures enter a courtroom, perception becomes almost as powerful as outcome. There have been whispers of redemption arcs, exclusive interviews, controlled leaks, narrative pivots. But redemption only works when the past stops surfacing. And here, the past appears to still be filing paperwork. Porsha has stepped back, guarded rather than defeated. Todd has retreated into process, surrounded by counsel and contingency plans. And the audience is left with unanswered questions neatly stacked in a file. So now the real question isn't what happened, it's what happens next. Because stories like this don't disappear when divorce becomes official or when headlines fade. They evolve, they wait for timing. If even half of what's being whispered behind closed doors proves accurate, then this chapter isn't closing, it's pausing. If Porsha was drawn into court chaos without publicly saying a word, what else hasn't been said? If evidence can resurface after everything was supposed to be over, what does that suggest about the version of events we were given? This isn't just celebrity drama, it's about control, timing, documentation, and who truly holds the narrative when the spotlight dims. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think this has been blown out of proportion, or do you believe there's a bigger reveal coming? If you were in her position, would you stay silent and strategic, or finally speak? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading everything. And make sure you hit subscribe because this story feels less like an ending and more like an intermission. Stay locked in with Celebrity Press. We're watching what others won't say out loud.